Alright, I think we can probably make a start. Kia ora everyone, my name's Jamie and I'm going to be running through this session with you today. Esther sends her apologies. She was going to try and make it in for this morning. She just got off a flight from the UK first thing this morning. She sent me a message about 5:30, 6 o'clock this morning and had literally just landed. So she's not going to make it. She was like, do you mind if I don't come? I'm like, go home, go to sleep, you'll be exhausted. Don't think anyone would have minded in that situation, but she sends her apologies, and I think Paul's going to be seeing you this afternoon or later today for the toots, whenever they are. Cool. So, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai, ko Jamie Denton toko ingoa, no Digital Educator aho. Kia ora everyone, my name's Jamie Denton. I work as a curriculum design manager within our business school in the University of Auckland. I was previously within education and social work, and before that also within AUT and a few other places, and I'll go through that in a little bit. But I also I'm a PhD student at the same time, studying in digital education and in technologies and how we can use technologies to improve education outcomes, and digital educator identities is one of my main areas of research interest. So today what we're going to be going through is this topic that's on screen, and hopefully you would have seen the note that I kind of put up on Canvas for you to bring a device with you and just make sure that you can get onto Canvas with that device. So everything we're going to do today will go through your Canvas course. At the moment you won't see much on there, but as we go through the session I'll just be publishing things as we go. Okay, so the activities as we go will just get published, and then we'll do them and then they'll be there for you. You'll see that this morning there's a new thing that I've published up there, which is basically this whole lecture but done in a different way. So it's done through H5P, and you can access everything and go through different hotspots, a bit about me, a bit about all the different things we're going to go through today. So I will also put up the slides later on today. There will be very slight differences in the slides because I changed them this morning, but it's literally just that since I wrote them earlier this year, a couple of articles went from being in press to being published. So all that's changed is on the PDF it'll say in press, on the slide on screen it will say a year on it. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just publish them after the session, and then later today I'll put out a new PDF. So if you're really worried about having the 2023 instead of in press, just give it till this afternoon and I'll put them up there. Okay, this whakatauki is probably going to be one of our major things driving today. A very rough translation of that into English would be look back and reflect so that you can move forward. Okay, keeping an eye on the past to enable you to go forward. There's other people such as Soren Kierkegaard who keep this idea in mind, where they say life has to be lived forward but can only be understood backward. Very good idea that as we're trying to move forward in time, we've got to reflect on what happened previously. So in this session today we're going to look at a few things that have happened previously so that we can think of what we do going ahead. Okay, I've already said that. I don't need to do anything more there. This thing's getting quite slow. Okay, so just a little bit about myself. This is a slide I hate doing. I came through University of Auckland, did a Bachelor of Arts in the late 90s and trained as a secondary school teacher. Never went into secondary school teaching. I was the dude that was like, hey, that sounds like a really good idea, and then did it and went, that sounds like a really bad idea. So I did all the training, got trained for it, and then went, actually no, I want to do tertiary. So I went back, did some more study, and ended up teaching in a tertiary institution down in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, and working down there at a polytech, lecturing down there for a few years. After a while, it's time to see a bit of the world, went up to Canada, lived up there for about 5 years, just travelling around, seeing a bit of Canada, living it up in there, then headed back to New Zealand, went back to Hamilton, taught down there for about another 5, 6, 7 years, and then my mum got really sick. She was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and at that point I was using a heap of digital technologies already in my teaching, so I thought, I wonder if I can teach fully remotely. This is back in 2015. This was pretty unheard of at that point. So I was like, can I be in Auckland with my family and teach people in Hamilton? And my boss was like, yeah, sure, give it a try, why not? So yeah, tried it for a while. It worked reasonably well. We didn't really have the technologies we need now. We didn't have Zoom, didn't have any of that kind of stuff. So I ended up leaving the teaching industry and going into a learning design job, which means I was helping other educators think outside the box and go, what can you do with your teaching and learning to incorporate new digital technologies, new ways of teaching, to avoid just doing the same old over and over. My perspective on technologies, and it's probably a little bit strange to say given the lecture we're about to do, is that we've always got to be really careful on what we're trying to do with them. The pedagogy, what you're trying to achieve, has to come before the shiny new tech. So in a classroom, a lot of teachers will go, oh, I really want to use this new app. And the first thing I ask them is, why? And they're like, oh, I want my students collaborating. It's like, can they do it on a bit of paper and pen? If so, that's a lot easier. It's a lot simpler. The students get more out of it. Oh, I really want them collaborating online. Cool. Why do we need to use that app when we can use something like Google Docs or Microsoft Word and collaborate online really quickly and easily? Yeah, it's that sort of decision of how do we make it really simple but really powerful. So that's who I am, that's kind of where I come from. My learning design roles have been with education and social work, AUT, now business school. And as I said previously, I'm also a PhD student, and Esther is one of my supervisors. And my PhD work is looking at when we move teaching out of the classroom and into fully online, what happens to the teacher's identity? So they're not in that physical space anymore, they're not doing the physical teaching. What happens for them? But today, what we're going to be looking at is 4 overlapping tales. The landscape of technologies, so digital technologies, how they were being integrated into education just before COVID-19. Okay, the historical landscape that all of that was built on. So basically a snapshot of what was happening around 2019, what got us to there, what happened during the pandemic in terms of all the new technologies and how that changed educational landscape, and how we can move forward from there, because we're still living in that shadow, but moving forward out of there. Any questions so far about anything? Nope, all good. Okay, so we'll start off with the landscape just before the pandemic hit. Right, as I said before, I came through uni in the late 90s, so I was born in 1975, and that was the same year that Bill Gates founded Microsoft, and the same year that this beastie came out, which is the IBM 5100. It's a portable computer, okay? I say portable because it weighs 25 kgs and is about the size of a small suitcase. Okay, consider that compared to your laptops right now. You know, this is meant to be a portable device. It cost $9,000 US to $20,000 US dollars. Okay, and it could only display 16 lines of code on that little screen. Okay, that little screen was all it was. It didn't go to an external monitor. Okay, and this thing's costing up to 20K US. Everything going into it, all the input information was coming through this tape, this cassette tape. Okay, so quite an old school beast, but this was a massive advancement on the computers that came before it, which were weighing 27,000 kilograms and costing about $500,000 US dollars. Okay, so pretty mind-blowing where we are now compared to this in the space of my lifetime. By contrast, my youngest niece is Isabel. She was born in 2008. Anyone else around that sort of, but she's what, a bit younger than you guys? But some people very close to that. She was born into a world where MP3 file formats, which led the way towards Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff, they'd been around for 15 years already. The PlayStation had already come out 14 years before her. YouTube came out 3 years before her. Facebook, 4 years before her. And the first iPhone was a year before she was born. There were 7,000 organisations creating, in the UK alone, creating digital technologies when she was born. When I was born, Microsoft had only just been formed. So in that space, huge technological advancements. So in that relatively short time, we've seen massive, massive technological advancements. And what we've seen happen through society with those technological advancements is technology has significantly changed the way that we work, think, live, communicate, and play. Okay, things are very, very different today than they were when I was a kid. Okay? Over the span of one single generation, nearly every single industry has been disrupted. Okay? Even traditional media forms, so normal TV, massive use of technology now. You know, it's not good enough anymore for us just to watch a presenter on screen without these hugely graphic heavy kind of augmented reality, virtual reality backgrounds happening. Okay, we've got so pushed into this new technology world that we've had this real blurring of the lines between what is the physical, what is the digital, and what is the biological. Okay, one of the people that I've quoted quite a lot in my PhD has actually stated that we have become essentially like cyborgs, that we are the combination of human and machine now, because we're constantly attached to a device. And the scary thing is, with things like ChatGPT, this thing is now making a hell of a lot of decisions for us. It's gone from the human making the decisions of the machine to the machine now making a lot of the decisions for the human. Okay? And I mean in very simple ways, like you put your essay into Grammarly, it tells you there was a spelling mistake or whatever. It's decided it for you. And you just probably went, yep. I know I do. So that's someone else making those decisions for you. So a little bit crazy. But what I want you to do is I'm going to get you to jump into Canvas for now, and I'm just going to hit publish on this. So on Canvas, if you go into the modules and pop down to, and mine will obviously look a little different than yours, down to our session today, this one would have just come up. Poll Technologies Experience in Education. Click into there, And what I want you to do is thinking about the stuff prior to 2020. What technologies have you seen used in education prior to 2020? What sort of things have you been seeing used? And there should be, let me just bring that up. So you should be able to, it should take you to that page and you should be able to just type in here. So pre-2020. Cool, and we should start seeing it populate. I'll just keep refreshing. And feel free to make some noise while you do this. You don't have to be quiet. Give me a shout when we start to run out. So if you see somebody else has already put it in there, just put it in again. The word will just get bigger. Cool. Get your last one in if you've still got one. Let's have a look what we've got. Right, let's stop you there. I'll do one last refresh. Cool. So what kind of things are we seeing? Come on, shout it out. Sorry? I think I heard Google. What else?
Turn it in.
Sorry? Turn it in? Yeah. A lot of word processing type stuff. Yeah. What else?
Grammarly.
Grammarly? Yeah. So things that are checking on word processing. Interactive whiteboards. Yeah. Nice. Interested in this one. The cool maths games. Was that like simulations and things like that? Is that what that one was? Whoever put that in? I won't ask you to speak up if you don't want to, but I'm guessing it was like kind of.
Oh, I didn't put it in, but it was just like, it's like, you know, like just any like online kids games, but they're like math themed.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, I don't know, I haven't played it in like 15 years, but I don't know, it's like, you know, like a pizza making game, like everyone's like using math to solve it or whatever. It's like,
Yep.
it's fun.
Nice.
And
Cool.
also just an excuse if you wanted to play a game and then say, no, I'm playing math games with you, but
Yep. Nice. Cool. Yeah. Interesting that just scanning over quickly, I'm not seeing things like Minecraft, those kind of creation-y tools, anything that's like a SketchUp, AutoCAD, that kind of, student creating kind of tool. I guess some collaborative tools in working together in Microsoft Word maybe, or in Google Docs, or maybe in some PowerPoint stuff or Google Slides. But yeah, quite similar types of things. So, yep, great, thank you. Excellent. Now, let's jump back in. Where are we? We'll keep that in mind. We'll just pause there for a second. We'll come back to your thoughts in a little bit. Going to pause that little story there for a second and have a look at where those educational technologies had come from. Okay, so what was the historical move up to those things? Originally, when I first started my PhD, what I was really interested in was what was the difference between learning designers, instructional designers, teachers, and different things like that. And one of the things I first started looking at was what was the history of some of the educational media. So where did some of these tools come from? Where did they start from? And I was actually quite surprised when I started looking at some of our educational technologies that we use today. Where did they start? So a couple of things, and this I'll make sure is accessible for you, but it's in that big H5P document that I released first thing this morning. But this timeline, so a couple of things that stood out for me, and I won't go through everything on this timeline, were these magic lantern things that are being talked about in 1890. Okay, and we'll come back to these, but magic lanterns being used in schools. Okay, so I was like, okay, that sounds like an interesting thing. And then, oops, sorry. Need to get onto that screen somehow. It's not letting me. Then also, it's not going to let me into that screen for some reason. In about 1910, seeing these instructional films come through. Okay, and I was thinking, what are these instructional films? And it's essentially just video. And when we're thinking about it, like, okay, so video recorded instruction, how is that any different to what we do quite a lot today? It's really not that different. So we kept looking a little bit more into that, and where that instructional video really started to pick up was in about 1940 to 1945. And it was the US government ran into this problem. And the problem they had was they were in the middle of World War II. They had people in the US, and they had people overseas, and they needed to train them. They needed to train the people in the US on how to build weapons and make ammunition. And they needed to train the people overseas on how to fight. Okay? Had all these people all over the place. So what they did was they went and decided, we're going to train them through using video materials. Okay, 1945 at the latest, they're sending out videos or film to train people. What happened in 2020? The world shut down, right? Anyone studying at that time? Anyone in school? What happened? A lot of classes went online or went to video. Where'd that come from? The war. 1945 was the technology that got us to that point of we're going to use videos because of 1945. So how much technology has really shifted in education since 1945? Not a lot. Anyway, we moved into, and I got interested in these magic lanterns. That first picture up here from 1671, okay? A little flame, pushing a light through a tunnel, which is pushing onto a slide, which is projecting onto the wall. What's that thing essentially doing right now? Pretty much the same thing, right? It is taking that image and projecting it on the wall. The only thing that's changed is we're not using a flame, and it's a lot better resolution, etc. So our educational technology for this classroom essentially comes from 1671. Yet we're saying we're in the cutting edge of educational technologies of these days. This was from about 19th century, a biology lecture. How is that any different than right now? What are you seeing? Lecturer standing at the front of the room, right, with an image being projected onto a slide. Students sitting in rows looking at the image. The only thing that I need is it looks like maybe a mask and a stick. This is from mid-19th century. We say we're in the cutting edge of new technologies, but go back, think of that video where everyone, when we're looking at the media and what's happening with, we had the TV news on. We had all this amazing technology happening. You're sitting there watching something that's essentially come from 1671 and is a reproduction of something that happened in 19th century. So when we jump back into where was technology just before the pandemic, the use of modern technologies in education was still relatively low. Where it was, this is from an article from 2005, so it's a little bit older now. Where it was used, it's typically focused on a very narrow range of applications, with word processing being the dominant use, and video, network conferencing, and email and internet being used more sparsely. Can you think back to that word cloud we just created? How different is that word cloud from this quote from 2005? Is there much difference? Oh, the silence is deafening. Not really, right? So we need to start thinking of a new way, a new approach. Because, as I said at the very start, society's changed. We're now connected to these devices, yet you're sitting there watching something that happened in 1671. So we need to start considering new approaches, new methods, new ways. So let's skip this one. Actually, are people already in this document? Oh, they got in there. I'll just jump into... Where is it? So I'm just going to open up this one, this activity. Compare and contrast your experiences with that observation. Okay? Jump into that Google Doc. Let's get this looking really crazy. Lots of typing on screen, lots of madness happening. Have a chat first. Make some noise in the room. It's way too quiet in here. What are your experiences up to the pandemic, not including, but up to, how do they map with what that states? Okay, just jot some notes down. I'm going to take a little bit of a break from my voice and let you go for it. It'll take about 10 minutes. Go on, don't let Ruby do all the work. Oh yeah, let some other people go. Cool, let's just finish up that sentence there on at the moment. You can always come back to this document later. Great. Thank you everyone for sharing. That was just scanning through it. It's really, really interesting to see. And the other thing that I find really interesting is you all kind of took over a bit of ownership of a certain bit of physical space, like digital space. No one was writing over anyone else's stuff. There was a lot of, no, this is my sentence, it was quite interesting to watch with no real instructions. It was just like, no, this is now the anonymous Kraken's place. They'll have that spot. But yeah, does anyone want to share anything, any thoughts from what they've shared? I'll take that as a no. Seems like there's, oh yes, sorry.
I was really surprised to reading through how many people said it wasn't as big as a thing done before the pandemic. Because I was homeschooled until high school, so all of my educational experience has been like post 2016. But I feel like all of my educational experience has been like very technology focused. Like we were all assigned like school laptops, and like pretty much all of my homework was always like on my computer. Like I don't even like own a notebook anymore. I've always wanted to use like just my laptop. Like even in high school, I never went to the library to like do research, and all of my research has always been online. Even like in uni, like in my 3 years of being here, I've only gone to the library for research maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
I feel like pretty much all of my learning has just been like on a laptop.
And that was something that really struck me. Just obviously couldn't read all of it because it was all happening all at once and it was beautiful chaos. But yeah, there didn't seem to be a middle ground. It was this really fascinating story of people that were really engaged in a lot of technology use within their learning and teaching and everything. And then almost the polar opposite. There didn't seem to be this, yeah, we did some in the middle. It was, no, my teachers very much just used, I think there was one comment that said like a stylus and paper and pen mostly. And then there was, no, totally over this other side, where it was all immersive and we barely used any paper. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, definitely. And obviously there is, and still remains to be, quite a lot of equity issues around access to technology, especially throughout New Zealand and in smaller rural areas. It can be quite difficult to get strong quality technological infrastructure down there. Anything else people want to share? Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Do you even think that the constant revisions to the educational system can keep up with the new technology?
Can the sorry, say that again. The multiple.
Do you think, like, the education system, like its revisions, do you think it can even keep up with the influx of new technology?
That's a wonderful question. We're going to hit that very, very soon in the other piece. There's two different pieces in that. There's a systemic piece, which is the educational system, which is what is the curriculum, what are the learning outcomes, what does the general kind of structure of our education look like? And then for me, there's also the practicalities of the delivery. So how do the teachers themselves and what happens in the classroom? So there's this structural alignment, and then there's this what happens in the room. I think we've created a system that's quite flexible, and deliberately so, that as long as you meet those outcomes, it doesn't really matter too much how you meet them. And that's where you end up with quite this difference in one teacher being what we call a good teacher versus another teacher that we don't see as strong, because their ways of teaching that curriculum are different than another teacher's ways. So can a teacher integrate more technologies into their ways of teaching? That's where I think is really fascinating. And that's actually, thank you, that's a great segue that I'm going to see if I can get to where those slides are. Because, where is it? Because that puts us into here. No, actually, I'm going to jump even further than that. Puts us into here. So when you look at the slides later, they're not going to make any sense whatsoever because we've jumped all over the place now. When you're looking at a teacher, there's different things that a teacher needs to know to be a good teacher. Okay? When we don't have technology in there, what a teacher needs to know is the content. I'm looking for my clicker so that I can point. They need to know their content, and they need to know teaching, and so they need to know the intersection of those two, which is how do I teach this content? You with me? Yeah? Cool. When we throw technology in there, we add a whole lot of complexity, because now, what's happening with this slide? We're going to ask them that they have to understand about technology itself. We need to know what is the right technology for that content, what is the right technology to teach with, and what is the right technology to teach that particular content. And that's where your question is really fascinating, because it brings us into this TPAC, or technological pedagogical content knowledge. This tiny little piece here. To be a really good teacher with technology, you have to have all of these bits. And that's a huge amount. So that's where this model gets really quite fascinating to work with. I went through that super quickly. Does it make sense? I like the honesty. I'm going to go back really through it. So, remove technology. A teacher without technology needs to know, how do you teach? What are good pedagogical methods? What are good strategies for teaching and learning? What are good approaches to teach? And they need to know the content that they're trying to teach. So a biology teacher needs to know biology, right? And they need to know what are some good ways to teach in general. Then they need to know what are some good ways to teach this particular concept within biology that I'm trying to teach. Make sense? I'm trying to think of an example. Let's go into the sports realm. If I'm a basketball coach, I need to know the game of basketball. I need to know how to coach. If I'm teaching a particular thing within that basketball world, like I'm trying to teach a particular move that I want someone to do while they're attacking, I need to know the best way to teach that technique, that move. Okay? If I want to teach that person how to do that move while using technology, I need to know what is the best technology to use for teaching, because a Word document is probably not going to be a really good technology to teach with that technique with, right? I need to know what is the best way of teaching that person with technology, with pedagogy, and with content. So I end up in this really small little space here. So that's the space that is, I'm an effective teacher with technologies. I need to know all of that stuff. And that's why people aren't that good at it, and that's why they hide and go back to pen and paper. Because it's actually quite hard to teach through technology, because you've got to understand the technology. And a lot of teachers that I work with, the thing they freak out about, what if it goes wrong on the day? I'll look like an idiot in front of my class. I've had 3 things go wrong already today. I probably look like an idiot, I don't care. I look like an idiot most days, so today's no different. Okay, but anyway, so we'll probably head back to that one in a little bit. But let's get out of there and try and head back into where we're meant to be. This one is the one that you're going to spend a bit of time on the tutes as well. Okay, and this model is around how do we, so if we want to use technologies, as I've said before, we want to use technologies that actually make a difference. If it's better to use a pen and paper, use a pen and paper. Okay, if it's going to be better to use a technology, then use a technology. This gives us a way of saying in what ways did the teacher use that technology, a way of categorizing it. Okay? The first one is substitution. This means just replacing a typical traditional activity with a digital version. Instead of handing you a piece of paper, I put it on Canvas and you can download the PDF. Instead of writing notes for yourself on a bit of paper, you type them into a Word document. Nothing's different. All you've done is change the bit of paper for tech. Okay, so that's substitution. The same when we watch lecture recordings. If you can't come to the lecture and you just watch it, all you're doing is substituting. There's no improvement in any way. Okay, it's just the same experience. The second one is when we start to make a little bit of improvement. So we're augmenting a little bit, and that's that augmentation level. Instead of handing out a paper quiz, we could do it through Kahoot. Everyone's used Kahoot? Yeah? Adds a bit of gaming to it, adds a bit of fun to it. We could do something like, instead of brainstorming on a bit of paper, we could put a Word document on screen and you could do it through Google Docs or something like that. The activity is not really that different, but we're just making it a little bit more augmented. One of the things I used to do when I was teaching down in Hamilton is I'd have a Twitter feed running at the same time as the lecture, and students could ask questions on the Twitter feed if there was something they weren't sure of, and another student could answer, or at the end of the lecture I'd go back and go, hey, these questions don't look like they've quite been answered. Okay? It's exactly the same as a student putting their hand up and asking the question. But what it did was those students that didn't feel comfortable doing that still got a chance to ask their question. But it's just augmenting it. Okay, modification is when we can redesign the task to use technology. So things like using polls or Google Docs to capture your involvement would also be in there. These have fuzzy edges, so they're not completely perfect. And then this redefinition. This is where we do stuff that you can never do elsewhere. Okay? A virtual field trip to Paris. we can't take you to a field trip of Paris. We're doing an art history class and we want to look at this museum. So we do a 360-degree tour through that museum. Those sorts of things are that redefinition. Okay? So what I want you to do is just have a bit of a think and try and come up with a few examples for yourself of these different levels. Okay, just have a couple of minutes, have a bit of a think. You'll find that some things could be between the two, and that's one of the criticisms in the research, is that some people might put something in augmentation, someone else might put it in modification. That's fine. It's blunt, it's a very blunt tool, but it's what we can use. Okay, give it a shot, have a bit of a chat if you can, so we can hear some noise. Go for it, a couple of minutes. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of something. You're going to hold up one finger if you think it's substitution, 2 for augmentation, 3 for modification, 4 for redefinition. If preferable, hopefully not the middle finger facing forwards for the one finger, but do what you got to do. It's all fun. Okay, so I want to change I have a Canvas-based quiz that just checks the, every week students can do this quiz just to check that they understand. And instead of doing that, I decide that coming into class they can do it via a Kahoot first thing for the first 10 minutes of the class. Get your, what do we got? I'm seeing a lot of not fingers up, so I'm waiting for people, so. Yeah, I'd go with 2 for that one, personally. So if you got 2, I'd go with that. Okay, I'm an anatomy lecturer, and inside my anatomy lab, I've got a whole bunch of bones. On the bone, students can come in, they can grab the bone, they can look around it. I put a QR code on every bone. When they scan it with their phone, they can then see that bone in a human body, where it is, what it does, all those sorts of bits and pieces. Where would that sit? Personally I'd probably put it in that fuzzy line between 2 and 3. 4, I'd want to do something slightly different with that as well. I'd want to do something extra, like have the student be able to maybe make the thing walk or do something with it. There needs to be something extra. Okay, instead of handing out lecture notes via Canvas, you all get a USB stick when you first turn up on the first day. There's nothing different, it's just a PDF. I'd go with a 1 on that. I do love how I'm seeing quite a lot of fingers switching and a little bit of, oh, is it that, I'm not sure. We're doing a course on cultural differences, and I organise a Zoom session with a First Nations person from Canada so that you can sit down and talk to them and discuss with them what their difference is in their culture is compared to your own. Yeah, 3 to 4, probably closer to 4. Yep, nice, because that, unless you had that person in that class, you probably couldn't do that otherwise. Okay. Rather than the teacher making a help file for the students on how to do an assessment, all of the students collaborate and create their own FAQ document. Which obviously then they can access themselves. Yeah, 2 to 3. Yep, nice, cool. As I said, it's a fuzzy link. The levels are a little bit not clear, and that's the biggest criticism of this, is it's not clear. And it's really a blunt tool to enable people to start going, what am I trying to do? How am I going to do it? What do I attempt to do? The other thing that I really wanted to mention, that I forgot to mention earlier, is it's not our goal to always redefine everything. Okay, this isn't the best, it's not like a hierarchy, that sometimes substitution is the best. Sometimes redefinition, sometimes augmentation, but it is very much what are we trying to do, how can we do it, is there a way that we can do this in a different way and a better way. All right. COVID. How was everyone else's experiences during that time? Does it bring back the trauma that I just experienced? Yeah? It's pretty crazy, eh? When you think about it, like 2020, that first start of 2020, and you'll see that timeline that I've got on screen right now, that was our time frame over how quickly everything went down. It was pretty quick in terms of, like, we're thinking on probably March the 21st at the university here, our biggest problem on that day was how are we going to work with students that are physically unable to enter the country because of the border closures. That was our biggest worry on the 21st of March, was we're going to have students in our class and we're going to have students that are stuck outside of the borders of New Zealand. And shit hit the fan like 48 hours later. Sort of 2 days later, it was like, okay, you've got 48 hours, everyone is going fully online. And for an institution like this that never taught online, it was massive. It was a huge, massive shift. Schools, they didn't know what they were doing. So massive changes, which caused huge disruption. I was actually teaching, when our Prime Minister announced that lockdown, I was running a workshop on how we were going to teach those students that were locked outside of the borders. And then someone put their hand up and was like, we've got a problem, she's just announced a full lockdown. It was like, okay, what are we going to do now? It's like, you got another couple of hours, let's make some stuff up and work out what we're going to do. But yeah, it was pretty insane. So think about, what did we do? What kind of technologies did we go back to? Sorry, I couldn't hear you over the fan. Google Classroom, Zoom. Yep. What else? Sorry? Teams. Yep. What else? So a lot of you weren't at the university at that time. We had the problem that a whole lot of our students were in different time zones now. So the idea of being able to do like a Google Classroom or a Zoom where we could do a synchronous, real-time thing, well, how's that going to work for someone who's physically located in China, which is what, 5 hours behind us?
Recording?
Sorry?
Recording?
Recordings, yep. But we didn't want to disadvantage any student. So we didn't want to say, okay, all of our New Zealand-based students can have a live session with the lecturer, but all our international students who are based overseas, they can only watch the lecture and they can't ask any questions. So everyone could only get the lecture, like the recording. And then so it very much went back to 1945, army style. Here's the video. Here's 2 hours of lecture, someone talking at you. And then people like myself going, can we chunk these down to like 3 minutes and then have some activity happening afterwards? And lecturers go, no, we can't do that. It's not going to happen. Instead, all they were focused on was, what is the basic approach that they could do? This was put out in 2020, this image, and he pretty much got it right. That what they did was just go straight, especially high schools and things, straight to Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, or Google Classroom. Then phase 2, start bringing back some other things. Because here, if you were a student with certain accessibility needs, like if you were blind or anything like that, or had some vision impairment, you were stuffed. Like, we didn't have any closed caption software happening or anything like that. It was just very much, we didn't have time to put in all of those accessibility things. So screen readers weren't working, none of that was working, and it was only here that we could start bringing those bits back. And then later, we could start thinking about what would happen if we had to do this for the whole term. And then afterwards, we started going into these new spaces, these new grounds. So, oh sorry, that's the wrong one. I did actually want to skip that one. So this is actually by an article that Esther put out, talking about how the educators were not ready to deliver instruction remotely. They were forced to have to engage online and become digitally savvy, and that they were vulnerable. There's this sudden vulnerability and the sudden uncertainty in what they needed to do. What was your story as a learner or as a worker at that time?
For me, basically when we are having Zoom, there are very, very few students open their camera or mute themselves. So basically, the teacher has a question and there's totally no response, or only like every time there's a specific one or two students, and others are basically some pretend their camera is broken or something, and some just don't open their camera unless the teacher say, I'm going to deduct your mark if you do not participate, and then you can see the cameras are all open like that.
So a lot of cameras not on. We had a problem here that students never gave us access or gave us the, what do you call it? Students never actually consented to giving us the right to look inside their homes. So to say that you had to have your camera on was actually invasion of privacy for students. And so we didn't mandate that cameras had to be on, because we didn't know, like maybe you were in a multi-generational home and the only study space you had was on your bed. And suddenly the lecturer's going, oh, this lazy so-and-so is still lying on their bed at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like, no, this is my only study space. So by keeping the camera off, you could get rid of any of those kind of things. So, but that meant that lecturers were talking to blank screens. Or when they did have anything live, most of the time they were just recording to a blank screen and putting it up to nothing. Yeah. One of my favourite things I saw during the pandemic was some 5 or 6-year-old kid changed their screen name to reconnecting ... so that, and then turn their camera off, so it just looked like they were constantly having to reconnect. I was like, our world's in good hands with that kid. Anyone else? What was your experience like? Was it fun? Was it? Yeah.
I think a lot of teachers have obviously experiencing the same drastic life changes. So expecting them to also immediately transition to online. My high school in particular had a really bad lag time of
Yeah.
I mean, really until that year finished, there just wasn't a way to properly test us or teach us anything proper until the next year when they had a full, a slight break to just
Process what's going on, and
yeah, so it just took a really long time. There was a lot of, I think the school said that your marks could not actually change that year based on where you were, other than improve, because...
So your GPA would stay at the same or higher?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yep.
I have a good feeling that at least half of the class, maybe some of the classes literally just have teachers. I just had a feeling. I'm not quite sure if that was true, but I had this
When it started for me, I was in the end of my last year of high school in the U.S. And even though my school was comparatively very tech savvy, technology was a huge part of my high school. Our transition was surprisingly someone was saying earlier, our grades became passive the rest of the year, and we didn't do Zoom or anything. Our classwork just became almost like a packet, a sentence school. Every week they would send us assignments that we would just send back to them. There was very little. I mean, obviously sending it to technology, but surprisingly there was very little. I don't know. They just gave up kind of, and then luckily because we had 2 more months until it was summer then for us. So then they had the 4 months of the summer to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, they kind of just kind of surprising because my school was very technologically savvy.
I guess if you were able to take advantage of the situation you were in,
Totally.
I was working, but the way my job works is that we're quite remote. So I guess it wasn't a big deal because we're always moving over screen size. The only big thing was that the face-to-face content side of things. So when we're processing a device that's being returned, so you can't manually you can't see the person there to put on a table.
Yes.
You have to do the Teams to call them, and then so that was a tough part.
It was exhausting. I don't know, I spend a lot of time in my day with other people, but doing heaps of Zoom calls and team calls, I was worn out afterwards. I don't know, it was something different. I don't know if I should tell this story or not, but my cat decided that Zoom calls was a really good time to join me, and being a cat, he has no problems with showing off his back end to the vice chancellor of this university. So he's right in front of me, and I'm trying to get my cat away but can't reach him enough, and I'm like, wow, there's just this giant cat butthole on my screen right now. Best moment ever. Who else? Yeah. Sorry, I can't hear you. Yeah.
And I think being put into lockdown so quickly, it didn't give anybody the time to adjust or to adapt to a situation that was inherently not known. So it's kind of you got chucked into the middle of the unknown, and you just had to learn how to adjust.
Yeah.
Thinking you can keep a stable grade and
Totally.
stable teaching. So
Yeah, people just, and it's that total unknown, and it's like, well, how are you going to cope with this unknown? And we kind of look to our teachers thinking, oh, they'll lead us through, but they were thrown into their total unknown as well. So, very crazy time.
Yeah, and I also want to add that when we are making online study the only option, it's kind of we didn't think of that some family have only one device, but both the parents and the children, they need to use the device, especially if they're more than one child.
Yes.
Then it will be a problem if they're all choosing online study. And what happened around me is not every family have a printer, but now they need to get a printer because they need to print out the homework or something, because they can, sometimes it's not a good thing to do. They can't just write on their device or something. And the parents need to use the computer, and child also need to use the computer, but if there's only one device, some families not just affordable for all families.
Yeah, no, how many devices in a household and who gets access to that device was a huge issue, especially if you had multiple people studying. And even worse at high school, if you had more than one student at high school, hopefully they had more than one device, but if they didn't, or if they happened to have not brought it home, because kids are pretty awful for that kind of stuff, then you're relatively out of luck. Cool. Any other things people want to share through? Yeah.
I found there is more trouble than we have the online class. It's just when we have the class online, it's just there will be some emergency things happens anyways. Just someone's microphone is broken that he can't answer the questions. Also sometimes it's just someone goes to the toilet, so he didn't answer questions, and just someone Wi-Fi is broken that he couldn't connect to the link. Just it happens a lot. So I feel when we have the online class, everyone's super tired, and also I have my online class in China for 1 year. So just there will be a lot of time difference. So sometimes I have to get up so early and have the class at the 6 a.m. in the morning. Which is super tired.
Yeah.
I feel when we have the online class, the students and the teachers, we all need to pay more attention to it. Just compared to the face-to-face, because you guys
we can see each other and see what we're doing here.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And how many times do people leave their mics on mute? I mean, we've all got that horror story, right? Like, you're on mute again. It was always the same person constantly. Awesome. For someone like me, though, there was a real silver lining to the pandemic in that it was horrible at the time. I will not be the person that says it was a beautiful moment. It was not a lovely moment. But what's happened is, as we've come out of it, there's been a lot more people that have seen the benefits of, they've had this time where they've gone, actually, I'm stuck doing this teaching and learning in a way that I don't like. I don't like the disconnectedness from my students. I don't like the way that I'm just rolling out lectures, and I'm not liking that there's no student activity. I'm not liking any of this. I'm still stuck with physical gathering limits or another lockdown or whatever. So people started experimenting a whole lot more with what they could do with technologies. And I think that, yes, we'll see some people go back to the days of old, but there's a lot more people that are starting to go into teaching and learning with technologies and have a lot more open mind with it. And that's led us into these really interesting kind of new futures. One of the big things right now, obviously, coming through is this generative AI, artificial intelligence. Yeah, ChatGPT has been the big talk of everyone, but you got things like Deep AI and other ones where you literally type in a text prompt and it will create an image for you. That's pretty freaking cool. And so it's a really interesting time in education, because it's like, well, if we've got these tools that are going to teach, they're going to generate stuff for us, do we still need to be generating things ourselves, or do we now need to be creating the prompts? Is the prompt the important thing? Is it that we need the students to learn how to use prompt engineering? How do I make a really good prompt to get a really good output? Or do I need you to write an essay about the thing? And that's where we are right now, is having that argument. Yeah?
I used to think generated tools like gaslighters, like, be really like convincing with the information they put up was actually like not correct.
Yeah. Yep. There's been a number of times with ChatGPT that it's just wrong. And it sounds so confident.
But how do you figure that out for yourself?
Well, once you've finished about a 3-year bachelor's degree, you should have enough knowledge, hopefully. No, it's, I mean, obviously generative AI is still learning. It's a pretty new technology, and it's developing and it's learning itself. But we do need to still take it with a grain of salt. We can't go, what it says is right. And we need to be able to say, that doesn't sound quite right. And that's one of the skills that we need to be careful not to lose, in that when calculators came in, when Excel came in, people would go, I've put these numbers into a calculator, I've got this number out, it must be right. And there was huge amounts of errors that came out. We've got the same problem. Well, they'd put in an input error somewhere, but they just got this number out, and it must be right. Same thing with ChatGPT, like, I was looking at something and I was asked it, I was like, I don't think I agree with this. So I said, well, what's the ISBN for that book? And it put out, the ISBN, the big long code that lets you track the book. So it gave me this number. I put it into the library database. Doesn't exist. I was like, okay, go back to ChatGPT. That wasn't the ISBN. What is the ISBN? It gives me a new number. Totally different book. Wasn't the book I'm looking for. And it's like, ChatGPT, you are gaslighting me. You are just making up 9 numbers that look like an ISBN and telling me that's this book. It turned out this book didn't even exist that it was quoting. It just looked really confident. So yeah, we have to be super careful with it. But yeah. Sorry, wait, say that again?
Do you think the integration
integration of technology within our educational system still creates an environment for students to form their own sense of knowledge, or are we becoming reliant on technology as a form of knowledge?
Oh, that's a fascinating question. The question is, and correct me if I've got this wrong, does the integration of technology mean that we're becoming reliant on that as a form of knowledge, as opposed to creating our own form of knowledge, or getting to build our own form of knowledge? The interesting thing, and the reason I went, oh, that's a really interesting question, is there only one form of knowledge? Is the first question. There can be multiple forms of knowledge, in my opinion, and that's a big philosophical debate. Is there more than one form of knowledge? So, yes, there can be knowledges about doing this thing or this thing, but also, is it knowledge that we need to know, or is it the application of the knowledge? So, as we go into this new generation and go into this new place in the world, we hit this problem. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit in my mind. We hit this problem when technologies first got really popular in about 2000, where we could access anything at any time. So being able to regurgitate information wasn't knowledge anymore, because I could just Google it. And before that, it was like I'd go sit an exam and it was name this thing, and I had to have memorized that. But now I don't need that because I can just Google it. So what is knowledge is having to change. And so the questions that we were asking was, given that you can just Google and get this information, what would you do with that information? What can you learn from it, and how would you apply it? So I think we've moved into this new space of how we use knowledge. So I don't think we're reliant on technology for understanding, but for kind of blanket materials. Did that make sense? Yeah? It sort of sounded like an essay question for a course, though.
Would you say that for like an educator and like a student to fully understand like the entirety of technology as a factor into the education, they would have to appreciate teaching without it?
Yep. I would. I think to appreciate teaching with technology, you have to appreciate teaching without technology. It's like appreciating a summer's day without having ever had a rainy day. You got to know what it's like without it to know what it's like with it, and also you got to know what you're trying to achieve with it. Yeah.
Like you're talking about this like relation of like information, like now with technology, for the past like 2 decades, it's like we to like store information. But do you think like we're moving into like a new age of technology, also like at least like threatening to like generate information too? Like do you think that's do you think that we're about to see like a new like redefinition of what knowledge is, and do you think that's, I don't know, like I guess it's like not like so many people talking about this concern. Like do you think that like the storage of knowledge is something we've been having discussed like a while now? Like, is it now like a question of like, I don't want to say it generates knowledge, but like I don't know, for a while we've already been talking about just like like media literacy that you need when education is so widely available, and like how much like critical thinking and analytical skills are like now necessary like now more than ever. But now, like with like AI and things like that, they're even more important and even more being lost. Like, do you think that's like a new?
I don't know if I agree with the idea that critical thinking is needing to be lost during generative AI. I think you need it more, because, like we're saying, that how do we know that the generative AI has generated something that's of quality and worthiness? I think I had this really fascinating conversation the other day where someone asked me, "Are you scared of AI? Are you worried about it?" I said, "I'm more worried about human stupidity." In that, AI is not going to push the button that launches the nuclear bomb, right? It's not going to create something. It's going to do amazing things, and we have to be careful of them, and we have to regulate them. But it is still, we've got to be, it's still only going to go as far as we let it go, which is where I'm a bit uncertain of it.
Teaching students how to ask the right questions instead of answering the right answers.
Yeah, so the term we're using for that is prompt engineering. What is the right thing to put into what is the right prompt to put in to get the data that you want out? So we're starting to look at it. In business school, we're saying, ChatGPT's here. People are going to use it. Is it plagiarism? Yes, if you put it in and you copy and paste it and you submit that as an assignment, it is plagiarism. Totally, because you've taken someone else's work, and machines, but someone else's work and submitted it. But to get around that, we're saying, what are the prompts that you would put in to generate an essay on this thing? So we're not going to mark you on the essay. We're going to mark you on the prompt that gets you the essay. And that way we get around the fact that you're going to use ChatGPT to write your essay. Because I want to know what you're going to put in to get your essay. And if it's a good prompt, then you get good marks. So that's kind of our way around it. And we've also, and this isn't a very well-known secret, but we've actually created AI that detects AI. So if you take a ChatGPT output and you put it in, we can take that output. We can put it into this other AI that tells us if it's AI generated.
Can it detect itself?
Sorry?
Can it detect itself?
Can it?
Can it detect itself?
I haven't tried it because it doesn't generate that. That AI is not, it's a detector, not a generator. But it's a lot of work to get around the detection.
I guess I was sort of wondering like how do we go about like teaching like the necessary like critical thinking or like analytical skills to use ChatGPT effectively? Because I don't know, I think like the problem that we had in like media literacy like since like the internet has been so widely like used, like I would argue has not even been adequate. I think that like we have struggled to like get people to like truly know how to like not just like language skills, but like I think that people like still struggle to like understand how to take in information online like incredibly, and I think that like that is like even more of a threat with AI. Like if we've already like struggled to like teach media literacy adequately, how do we teach like those like even more advanced like human critical thinking skills with AI when they're even more important now? Like how do we execute that education?
Yeah, these are a lot of questions we don't have answers to at the moment, and they're great questions. But, ChatGPT only popped out in November. So there's a lot of, it has revolutionised a lot of things, and it's thrown a lot of thinking up in the air. And universities are really, really slow. Our policies take years to develop, and our thinking and how we're going to use this, they're really slow, and they're really, it is a problem we're going to have to wrestle with for a while on how does it work. It's going through the courts right now in, I think, the States around what regulations need to be in place. And we just have to wait and see what happens from it. But AI has been involved. We've hit a new level of AI, but Grammarly was AI. Microsoft spell checker was AI. All these things were artificial intelligence. The fact that I sent my dad a message the other day saying happy birthday, and then it said, do you want to add this to your calendar as a birthday? That's AI. It's already here, it's already integrated, it's just that it's hit this new level where it's really explicit, and that's where that's kind of in our face at the moment. But we've been with it for quite a while. Yeah, did you have another?
Would you say like as an educator and students and stuff that the shift between like a non-technological based kind of teaching and a technological kind of based teaching had a positive or negative impact on like you as an educator and student?
From my personal experience, I've only ever experienced positive. There are negatives, obviously, in terms of integrating technologies before you know what you're doing with them and before you know what your outcome is that you're wanting to achieve. That is the biggest thing, is a lot of, especially high school teachers go, I just want to use this thing, but they don't know why they're using that thing. And that's where you run into problems. But if you start with what am I trying to achieve, and what's the tool I can use to achieve that, then it's usually a really positive experience. Cool. But yeah, I think tech is just going to burst forward from here. You know, and what I'm hoping is that I would love to see these rooms demolished. Yeah, that these kind of spaces, they lead us to teach in certain ways. Yeah, when you come into a room and it's got tables and chairs set up, and you know, you walk in and you go, oh, we're going to do some collaboration today. We're going to be working together in groups. Whereas here, you walk in and you go, oh, I'm going to be watching this thing that's up here. Like, you already know that you're going to be a passive recipient of information, and that's not good methods of teaching. We already know it's not a best way of teaching, it's just a really economical way of teaching. It's cheap. But yeah. Hopefully, today's been of interest. I think we're probably sorted and done. Probably can let you go and have a coffee. But it's been my pleasure having a chat with you, and yeah, keep thinking about how you can break down those walls of technology and use technology within your own spaces and your own use of technology within your own studies as well. Because as students, you get to drive what the teachers need to be doing as well. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.